All right, let's do our SEC Spring Football Focus. We go down to Gainesville. The Florida Gators, second team in the Southeastern Conference to wrap up spring practice, had their spring game over the weekend. Someone that is always on top of Florida Gators athletics, Steve Russell from WRUF in Gainesville, joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports Page, brought to you by Image Matters. Hey, Steve, Vince, and Austin Ward. How you doing, Steve?
Guys, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right, Steve, let's talk about this quarterback situation. What have we learned, if anything, coming out of camp?
Nothing.
Okay.
And I'm not being facetious. I mean, it is a dead heat between Driscoll and Brissett, and the numbers kind of show that. Brissett in the game was 9 of 16 for 233, 2 touchdowns. Driscoll, a little more accurate, 12 of 14 for 147, and ran for a touchdown. So these guys are neck and neck, and it's going to go right into fall camp, and there might not be a starter name until the first weekend. Muschamp even said he could play both guys if the competition stayed this close.
Steve, you answered one of my questions right there, if they would play both. But I want to quickly touch on the news that just came down about 15 minutes ago. Ronald Powell out with an ACL injury after I guess he left with some knee questions on Saturday, and it turned out to be much more serious than Florida certainly would have hoped.
Yes, that's a big blow, and of course, depending on his rehab and when he comes back. You know, when he came in here, fellas, he came in here with a tremendous amount of hype, and in my opinion, did not play well at all his freshman year because he was full of himself. I mean, he really was. Mm-hmm. Last year got better, but this spring, Muschamp was raving about him and what he had done, and if he can't go in the fall, that's a big blow at the buck position. There's no question about it.
Visiting with Steve Russell from WRUF in Gainesville as Florida Gators wrapped up spring practice over the weekend. What else about that spring game or in camp that has really stood out to you and caught your eye, Steve?
You know, I could probably talk an hour about this, but let me condense it a little bit. This is certainly the team now, fellas, that has the Will Muschamp stamp on it. Last spring was just a mishmash. I mean, the highlight of the spring last year was a touchdown pass from a walk-on quarterback. John Brantley was 4 of 14. The game was as vanilla as you want to get. At least on Saturday, Muschamp said, look, I want a downhill running game, and we're going to stretch the field with vertical passing, and that's exactly what you saw. They're raving about a kid named LaTroy Pittman, who's from up in North Marion here, not too far away, who was a running back in college, but they moved him to receiver, and I like him. He gives Florida a big play threat to go along with DeBose, and he's only a freshman, but his early enrollment really helped. And then the most surprising thing was the play of the offensive line, which last year couldn't block you. And this year, seemingly with a new strength coach in Jeff Dillman, a new coach in Tim Davis, that group actually moved some people out of the way to run the ball downhill. That was the most striking thing to me. And Driscoll even said, guys, the strength of the offense right now is the offensive line. And if you would have told me that a year ago, he'd be saying that now. No way.
Steve, it sounded like, just based on Coach Muschamp's comments after the game, that he certainly sounds more confident and comfortable going into another season. When you watch him throughout spring, I mean, do you get that sense just watching him work as well?
Without question. The second year, knowing everything, and getting his guys. I mean, for example, Dillman is the strength coach. When Urban Meyer was here, he wanted the fastest team in America. And so his strength coach basically trained that way. Mm-hmm. Well, he wants a physical Alabama LSU kind of team, and that's not what Mickey Marotti brought to the table. So that's helped him. And then I think he's really happy with Brent Pease. You know, he kind of shares the same philosophy that Will does, and he just loves Tim Davis, as I mentioned, the offensive line coach. So, yeah, you can certainly tell, guys, that he's much more relaxed and much more comfortable running what he wants to run now.
So what about the running back position? Is Gillislee the starter, or has that been determined, you think, at this point?
Gillislee's going to be the starter. I don't think there's much question. I think the question becomes the backup. Mac Brown, who's been here for a while but has done absolutely nothing, is getting a chance. And there's another kid named Chris Johnson, who's from Ocala. He played at Trinity Catholic. He ran the ball very well in the spring. So I think it's going to be more a matter of Gillislee, the starter, who plays behind him. Omarius Hines was moved to running back as well. So there's 2 or 3 guys that are looking to get some playing time behind Gillislee.
Steve, other than Powell, there's at least one other injury concern on the defensive line, and Will Muschamp and several others have made no secret that in the SEC, that's where great defense starts up front. Is that a big concern now, or more of a concern for Muschamp moving forward in this summer with a little bit of uncertainty there?
Yes, I don't think there's any question. When Florida signed, I think 23 on signing day, 14 of those 23 were line players, either offensive or defensive line. He understands that you have to have that to be successful in the SEC, and there's not a lot of depth there. And they're counting on guys like Earl Okine, who's from Gainesville, who hasn't done a whole lot in his career, and some guys that have been okay. So, yeah, that's a concern. If they get some rotation and get some depth, maybe okay, but without it, that's a place that I think Florida will need some help again in recruiting.
Steve, will we see you in Knoxville this weekend with Florida Gators baseball team?
Yes, coming up for that, and looking forward to that because this will be an interesting series all of a sudden. Florida has been really hurt by injury. Losing Tyler Thompson, a reliable bat at the bottom of the order. They lost our starting third baseman, Josh Tobias, and now the pitching. Whitson made his first start in the SEC, got yanked at the second inning, but he was throwing 91, 92, but his location was awful. Brian Johnson didn't have a good start Thursday, and then, with Whitson hurt, and now Hudson Reynolds didn't pitch this weekend because of a tight shoulder. So all of a sudden, that very, very good starting pitching is questionable. Play FSU tomorrow, and then come see you guys. Not an easy league to play in, fellas.
Steve, looking forward to seeing you. Hey, press box hot dogs are on me, all right?
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That is Steve Russell, terrific guy, WRUF in Gainesville.